mainstream. Well, you used to be, Hermela, but but none of us are mainstream. So we're like boots on the ground, and I want to cover it clearly so that my followers can know what position they should take and what we can or cannot do to support. So, Hermela, tell me about the ethnic divisions within Ethiopia, and then tell me about the Prime Minister and what his position was and what it may be today.
So first of all, Dave, thank you so much for this platform, because I think one of the issues with the in terms of the understanding the conflict in Ethiopia, or understanding any conflict in general, is that people tend to talk to their own so-called like group, and it tends to be an echo chamber. And what you'll find when you look at some of the issues in the conflict on Ethiopia is there are universal problems. There are problems of Western intervention that does not respect the African voter. You'll find that there is support for rebel insurgency in different countries, particularly Black and brown countries, that's trying to overthrow an elected government, that's trying to say, we know you voted for this, but we think this should be what's in power, right, for their own reasons. So that's one basic premise. So as far as the regions, officially there are 4 regions. So there's the Amhara region, the Tigray region, the Oromo region, and the Somali region. So those are 4 different ethnic groups, but those are not the only ethnic groups in Ethiopia. There's probably hundreds, definitely 83 languages. So those are not really represented in the official lines. As far as the current issue goes, there is the northern Tigray region that has about 7 million people. TPLF originated in that region as the Tigray People's Liberation Front in the early 1970s. The idea was to liberate ethnic Tigrayans from the communist government at the time. Eventually, Western backed, they were able to overthrow the communist government in 91 and come into the helm of power in Ethiopia. They strayed from that concept of liberating Tigray when they went into the helm of being of ruling over all 110 million Ethiopians. They didn't take care of that region that bled to get them into power. Tigray is largely poor. There are a lot of gross records of rape, issues with women. They really didn't invest in that region. They just kind of consolidated power in Addis Ababa. So they got into power on the backs of ethnic Tigrayans, which they abandoned. They got into power for 27 years. Then they were ousted because of all the protests of Ethiopians who said, we don't want to live under this oppressive regime that is ethnically aligned to a minority group, that is hoarding all the money and economic potential of the country. And so 3 years ago, Abiy Ahmed was voted in by them, by TPLF and other coalition groups, probably them thinking he was going to continue to be their puppet. Well, plot twist, he turned out to be not at all. And he wanted to actually do something different in Ethiopia and make it more equitable. So as a way of getting back into power, because they've done this before and it has worked, they're once again trying to use the ethnic Tigrayans, saying this is not about just us as a political group that has become ultra greedy and rich, but this is about you, the ethnic Tigrayans. They're trying to eliminate you. This is about genocide. So fight for us so that we can get back into power. It's like you can't do that twice in a lifetime, right? Which is why you see such a strong resistance from the rest of Ethiopians. They know this group. They've seen how they operate when they're in power, and that's why they're fighting to keep them out of power. And this is just the very top folks, right? The rest of Tigrayans, the majority of the Ethiopians have no problem with. They're actually suffering because of a political group that will not let go.
I see. So the Tigrayan political group was in power for 30 years?
Yep.
And now the Ethiopian government is I guess fighting against the Tigrayan. Are they considered rebels? What are the two factions, and how does Eritrea come into play?
So they are rebels because they chose to take up arms against the government, right? So, but they're not like your underdog rebel group that's fighting for power, that's fighting for recognition. This is a group that had power for 30 years. They have strong Western alliances, which is why you see the US sort of spouting their narrative of genocide, which is why you see Western media working with them, which is why you see all of these lecturers and scholars and people in the civic space working with them because they have been in power and made all of these connections, have a lot of money to pump into this. And we know how money can really influence a narrative. They like to use, I've seen people invoke Black Lives Matter, people that are pro TPLF, and it's like, it's the opposite is true. What this
Right.
group is, these elite group of Ethiopians, ethnic Tigrayans, are actually more important than the rest of the 100 million. So it's the opposite of Black Lives Matter, but they will invoke anything to try to get other people into their cause.
People were asking me to focus. I'm focused. I have notes and I have maps and I'm doing a lot. All
Yeah.
right. So anyway, I want to get back to the topic at hand. So the TPLF, they governed for over 30 years. And then they elected Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed Ali.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so now he's been elected since 2018.
He was a provisional government in 2018, and this year he officially became voted in by the people. But he back then enjoyed the support of the majority of Ethiopians. But he delayed the federal election because of COVID.
Oh, baby, right.
Thing that TPLF likes to talk about as if it's something completely insane, but really 78 other countries also delayed their elections during this period because they were listening to international advisors who said, you know what, this is going to be more detrimental to your people because it was the vaccine wasn't there yet, or there were a lot of people dying through COVID. But he eventually did it, and he's been elected. So now you're talking about a rebel armed insurgency, a small one when you compare it to the rest of the country that's trying to take out an elected government.
Okay. So the Tigrayan, the TPLF was in power. So they're not a rebel regime. They're kind of an ousted regime that's trying to come back and overthrow the current government.
Exactly. Because 30 years was not enough, right? They need another 30. I mean, it's the height of greed. It's
Right.
the of being insatiable in terms of power. All they had to do is fall back, either be a part of this new government because they were given opportunities to be a part of that government. There were many efforts to try to negotiate with them, and they chose to reject all of them because they knew they've done this before. They knew if they just go to war, invoke genocide, they had kept their people poor and uneducated, so they could brainwash them into thinking once again it was about their ethnicity when it really wasn't.
So what happened a year ago when the fighting actually started? I think November 4th or something was like the anniversary for when the first shots were fired. What started it a year ago?
Yeah, so I feel like my expertise is in the year, and then I think TG can speak a lot to those 27 years because that was when I was not paying that much attention. So I'll talk about that, and I'd love to hear TG talk about the sort of the 27 years that they were ruling. So a year ago, the TPLF attacked a military post in the region. It was a federal military post, so they killed a bunch of Ethiopian soldiers as a way of they started a war and they wanted to get advantage by taking a lot of the armament. That was the biggest military post in the whole of Ethiopia. That's the other thing about TPLF. They dominated the military space. So when you dominate the military with all your loyalists, you can oppress the country, right?
Right.
So they attacked that northern command post. They killed a bunch of soldiers. And then when the government started fighting back, they said, oh my God, they're trying to kill all ethnic Tigrayans, right? It's as if we saw the insurgency earlier this year in January here in the US.
Correct.
But assume that as those insurgents were a certain ethnicity, right? So they attack a military post, and then when the government fights them back, they say, oh, this is a genocide of insurgents.
Correct. And similar to March 6th, I mean, to January 6th here in the States, they tried to say that the election wasn't over and that Trump was still president and Biden actually won. So then it started off as considered a peaceful protest. Then they stormed the Capitol, right? I'm an American. I know America isn't perfect, but I was born here and I appreciate the democratic process, like democracy, voting. So I didn't appreciate, one group saying it was a fake election and they're going to storm the Capitol. If black folks had stormed the Capitol, they would have shot us all down. It wouldn't have been no, oh, we're just going to take them in and have some discussions and a couple of arrests. We would have been shot and killed, and we would have been considered insurgents or treasonous. So I totally understand a government being in place and then some small group saying it's a fake election and then trying to overthrow the current process. So it sounds to me that that the gripe with the TPLF is that they're trying to overthrow the process of government.
Absolutely. And imagine it not being 4 years of Trump, but 27 years of Trump. And
Right.
finally, after 27 years, struggle, people protesting, getting killed, finally it turns and you get whatever leadership that you want. And still, rather than just accepting that defeat, the insurgents come back and they try to undo that within less than 2 years, 3 years. They didn't even give this prime minister a chance to do his job. During these 3 years, there were so many ethnic clashes, ethnic killings across the country that the TPLF is allegedly responsible for, that they bankrolled, that they paid people or gave people money as an incentive to kill each other based on ethnicity, to try to land grab and get certain resources from their neighbors of other ethnicities. So it's like we couldn't have peace. The country could not have peace while or after the TPLF was ousted. So yeah, so TG knows so much more about it. She was like involved in some of the protests, so she can speak to that part.
So yeah, TG, I want to get to the 27-year reign of the TPLF, and I want to talk about the ethnic groups and how maybe the TPLF or maybe the government, y'all have to let me know which, that is it infighting between the ethnic groups? I feel like everything I've researched, there's not a lot of unity between the groups. Is that because of how the TPLF reigned? Is that because other groups want to be in power and they don't want Tigrayans to be in power? So tell me about the 27-year Tigrayan reign. Were they oppressive? And then let's talk about the ethnic groups after that, TG.
Yeah, so thank you, Dave. So yeah, 27 years, it wasn't easy for all Ethiopian. Actually, when TPLF take over, they know if they don't put democracy, the world is in change. So they have to place some kind of ethnicity division between the people. So they know this day is going to come, because people is not going to sleep and wait for you for 100 years for a slave. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So they've been doing this work, division, like saying like Amhara is a killer of Oromo, Oromo is this, Somalia. They've been, planting the seed for a long time, and they also create like those regions.
I'm,
Before there wasn't even region,
I'm
so
going to
they
show
create
a
like
map
for,
here just so
yeah,
that
they create
everyone
like,
knows.
yeah, they create like those Somalia region, Oromo region, Amhara region. It wasn't like that before. It was like one Ethiopia, you know what I mean? So they divided and they start celebrating every year in Addis Ababa. There's a region celebration, blah, blah. So they've been dividing it. They've been conquering this for 27 years. And then every time, especially the youngsters in the city and the capital city get up and say, question, what they do is prisoned, killed. And of course, like back in the day, for example, I'm one of the witness actually go through their suffering. In 2005, I lost 3 or 4 my friend at the university when when I was in school. And every time we question something, we get killed. But the world at the time, there's no social media, we don't even have phone, so the world don't see what we've been through. They portray everything, especially the prime minister at the time. His name is Mele Zenawi. He's really like devil. So he portrayed to the world the country is growing, blah blah. But under the cover, journalists and the youngs, the educator, everybody go to jail and get tortured. So that was the 27 years the Ethiopian people suffered. Not only the Ethiopian people, the funniest part, the Tigrayans suffered too. They don't even have water. They don't even have, I cannot even tell you. Actually, the most like suffered region is the Tigray. Like the Tigrayan mother and like little kids, everybody suffered. And that 27 years, the only people who get benefit from this TPLF group at that 27 years, the people who's in power, their children, their cousins, their close friends, everybody in power, they send them outside for education, and they pay for them, because that's what they take. I mean, that's what they do, and they take the country resource and investing on those people. Those people today, that's most of them. That's why they scream with false narrative, and they telling everybody genocide where there wasn't genocide, where like they trying to portray everything like that, because they already get benefit out of that government, so they want it in power. And the second things most people don't understand and realize, actually, you know, right now, like the things I want you to come on this live, and we want to go in every American people lives wherever we can, and people need to understand America is actually fueling this war more, because America and Egypt are very close. Everybody knows, very close friends, very close alliance, because Egypt protects the American, I mean, protect the, you know, the Arab country for America. If an Arab country come to America or trying to, you know, create war, whatever, Egypt is the main place, the main area for America to do war. So Ethiopia and Egypt right now, we not good, because we have this water that goes from us to Egypt. Everybody knows about Nile. And then that's how they eat. That's how they, I've been in Egypt. I've been in Cairo. I've been in Hurghada. Egypt is like Europe because of our water, because of our pure soil that goes with the water. And so Ethiopia, being like 100 million people suffer, while we have that water, we can use it for electric power. We can even sell the electric power for other countries and get dollar and get benefit. But Egypt say, that's my water, but the water is in our country. So the Ethiopian government, actually the TPLF government, the one who started this dam, we start building a big dam. So the dam started in the TPLF, but they kind of, you know, back it up here and there because the situation, all that. And but Meles Zenawi started the dam. We appreciate that. Still, we have to recognize also something he did good. You know, he started it. It's not Prime Minister Abiy did that. You know, he started it. Prime Minister Abiy is finishing it. But even though he started it, he kind of, you know, is leaking around with America, with Egypt, is still doing things around, trying to, you know, not to go war with them. But this issue been for a long time. But what happened is, like, now Prime Minister Abiy, the dam is finished, we have to fill the water and start power. So the Egyptian is like, no. So America trying to get in the negotiation, and Dr. Abiy said, because the negotiations they put on the table, it's not really like a side of Ethiopia, it's more like for Egyptian. So Prime Minister Abiy say, no, I'm not gonna negotiate. America, get the fuck out of here. So what America do right now, so they have to pay this rebel group, which is, you know, I'm not even mad about Tigrayan people. I've been telling everybody, I love my Tigrayan people because they are my blood, they are my people. But those people actually sell my country. Basically, they buy them to create this war. They buy them, they pay them. They say, we're gonna give you anything you want. You know, in power, somebody's trying to take your power, blah, blah. We're going to support you with this, you know, Western media. We're going to tell lies. We're going to tell,
Let me jump in. Let me make sure I'm following.
Sorry.
So it's no. This is good background. So it sounds like the Tigrayan TPLF, right? I don't want to say government because they're not in power anymore.
Right. The other thing that's worth noting, they like to call themselves the government, but then they're demanding the actual federal government provide communication and water services. And it's like, if you want to call yourself the government, you have to have the capacity to provide that to your people. Not to interrupt you, Dave, but go ahead.
So it sounds like there's an issue between Ethiopia and Egypt with this dam.
And then those rebel groups sell our country. Basically, they help them right now. If you see Ethiopia is 100 million people, and then Ethiopia have national, you know, government, all that. These people are a few group people, but they get satellites, like free satellite. They know where Ethiopian National Guard are, where, because America have satellite all over the world. We know this. We're not stupid, okay? So they help them to fuel up, because America don't want to involve Egypt, don't want to go and fight. Nobody want to waste, because Egypt go start creating war on Ethiopia. America have to support her. America have to put. So instead of doing that, if you have like mind and if you can read what America should do, just turn people against each other, create a civil war. You know what I mean? So once the civil war happen, we start, you know, fighting each other. We're gonna forget about our growth and then our dam, our everything. So we give them, like, you know, a peaceful place. So That's why in America you see all this fake CNN news, Al Jazeera, everybody just fueling up and putting the fault, the blame on Ethiopian government, because that's how they get attention. Also, other country is a puppet of America, like England, or everybody is like American aligned. Whatever America said, they follow. So they blame Ethiopian government when they don't know really the truth. And then TPLF group, you know, they greed. Imagine they've been actually destroying their own country for 30 years. What do you expect from them? When they offer them this, they like, I don't care. The sad part, the people of Tigray, especially the diaspora, the one who didn't get benefit, the one who didn't eat, the one who didn't have anything to do with this, fall for their bullshit and destroy their country and say, there's no Ethiopia, we're gonna divide Ethiopia. At the end of the day, it's like even here for some of the Tigray people who watching this video, at the end of the day, we all outside. We live in America. I live in America. Hermela live in America. Everybody live in America who fight, right? At the end of the day, if there is no Ethiopia, your people, whoever, your sister, your cousin, your aunt, your brother, my sister, everybody suffering. We're gonna live here peacefully, comfortably. The reason we fight, the reason we like wake up. This is not only, you know, sometimes you gotta read. Go instead of just getting angry. Like sometimes I get angry, so I take responsibility. But instead of getting angry and start fighting each other, read. They use us like, you know, they use us like their own weapon. Like because they know Africans are stupid. If they give us something, somebody start creating a war, we're gonna be in that situation. I can give you one example. Libya. When the Libya war started, you know, America started buying those Libyan people to turn around Gaddafi. Libya was the richest country in Africa at the time. Mm-hmm. They turned the Libyan people to, like, you know, around to like that they do right now. Like they turn the people on like Dr. Abiy, right? They turn Gaddafi like that. They go there, they take the resources, they take the oil, they take the gold, everything. They leave Libya. Right now, Libya is the shittiest country in Africa because the civil war, they're killing each other. They don't even know what to do, but they have the most beautiful country, richest country in Africa. I'm telling you. So when
TG, your issue with the United States is that they seem to be supporting an ousted regime. And you think that the United States is doing that for political reasons, and they're not really helping the people, because right now the Ethiopian government that's in control, it's not Tigrayan, right?
No, it's not even so much, Dave, that it's whether they're Tigrayan or not. It's the group that's willing to sell their country's resources to the West.
Yeah.
Price versus a group or a government that's unwilling to do that because they want to see the majority of their 100 million Ethiopians eat and drink, get the basic services first. We've seen this. This isn't really only an Ethiopia story. It's just an Ethiopia right now. Haiti, one of the first independent countries, Black countries, right? It goes through the same thing. They go through economic sanctions and all these different ways to keep them in a chokehold when it has so much gold and so many natural resources. So a way to kind of frame it that might be easier to understand in terms of the American landscape is, say like 0.5% of Black folks identify as a particular ethnicity of Black, right?
Right.
Political group that says that they support that group. They're backed by the Western government or whatever other government to get into power, and they don't even actually provide for that 0.5% of the Black people. They maybe provide for the 0.1. Two, they oppress the rest of Black folks to appease that other country that is supporting them, and then when it's like a way of they're just kind of selling off their people as a whole. So they're Black when it's convenient, or like they're Ethiopian when it's convenient, and then and when they can't get more of their share. So equality to those that have been privileged feels like oppression, And that's why you see some of the Tigrayan activists, many of whom have TPLF connections, others just think they're doing the right thing and have been brainwashed by that propaganda. But they're literally just playing folks into trying to get back into power against the wishes of 100 million people. It's just completely illogical. And it's that's why we've created the hashtag no more, because it's gotten to a point where it's like, how many times are you going to do this to other countries before they start to see the game, before they start to see how you use humanitarian aid as a weapon in terms of, you say the UN and the WFP go in and they say they want to provide aid to Ethiopia. And then what happens? We find out rogue UN officials are actually giving humanitarian aid to this armed group. They're giving them communication devices so they could arm these poor Tigrayans to come into other regions and kill themselves, get themselves killed, and kill each other, right? So it's like, it's just the group that's pro-Black, pro-Ethiopia, and the group that's just pro this little elite political group that's been in power for a long time.
Political group is the TPLF.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me jump in. I have questions, a bunch of questions. People are trying to join. I want to keep it focused on us for now. I don't want to start adding people yet. But there's a question. Sarona said, could you all please explain to us as to why Ethiopia brought in another country to attack Tigray, which is Eritrea? So, Hermela, can you explain that?
Sure, and then I'd love to hear what you said. Okay, so it's not ideal, right? It's not ideal to have to bring in a neighbor to help you. But here's the thing that's worth understanding. TPLF dominated the military. A lot of the generals were Tigrayan or pro-TPLF. They, for 27 years, made sure that they had a stronghold in the entire country. And I think some people are saying that map is a little outdated, by the way, Dave. There's some political issues with that. But
okay.
So they just had a chokehold on the country. So it's a little bit difficult to fight them when they've had that kind of advantage. So it's not ideal to have to bring in Eritrea, but Eritrea and Ethiopia had made an alliance. They want peace. They do not want to constantly be at this stalemate. They're essentially the same people, right? The UN or Joint Ethiopian Human Rights Commission report did an investigation of some of the atrocities. They found Eritrean soldiers, Ethiopian soldiers, Tigrayan soldiers, as well as Amhara militia soldiers, all had committed atrocities, as you expect to happen in a war. So it's not ideal, but Ethiopia cannot survive. The 100 million Ethiopians cannot survive and get out of the chokehold that TPLF has kept them in for 30 years unless they have the help of Eritrea. It's just a necessary alliance for the greater good of not just Ethiopia and Eritrea, but the Horn. Somalis have also been under the oppression of TPLF. So it's something that I personally didn't like in the beginning and thought it was, more sinister. But as time has gone on, I realized the Ethiopian government is essentially the underdog. They're the new power, right? They're trying to get their power. The prime minister was trying to make the military a little bit more even and equitable, but they have just had 27 years on him, right? So it's just something that is necessary for the greater good.
So I have a question about the prime minister, Abiy Ahmed Ali. Recently, Facebook took down one of his posts that says he urged citizens to bury rebels. Let's talk about that. Is that would I want my president telling, people to bury another ethnic group? I mean, I'm
saying though, that's what Tigrayans, or it's pro TPLF Tigrayans want you to think. What he's saying is bury this terrorist group that is making their own ethnicity suffer and that's making everybody else suffer. You got to also remember that this TPLF and the people that support it were just bragging about the idea that this group was going to force their way into the capital of Ethiopia and overthrow the entire government and take over 100 million people.
And the capital is in Addis Ababa, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well, I've been hearing all the news about, the city may go down. I've been hearing other people say that's not true. As of today, which is November 10th, what do you guys know about any attacks on Addis Ababa?
There's none.
They want you to think. Go ahead, TG.
Yeah, that's what they make you think, because there is none. And our families in Addis Ababa, everybody's in Addis Ababa. There's nothing going on really right now. Of course, they portray this outside, like especially the diaspora I don't even know just why they do this. They just put all this wrong information, collaborating with CNN, Al Jazeera. And then there was a post like 5 months ago, something happened outside Ethiopia, outside Addis Ababa. They put that video clip that was from 5 months ago. They make it was yesterday or the other day. So all this, false narrative or false like news and all that stuff. That's why right now Ethiopians is fighting, because they have to stop like putting this in people's mind, because they've been lying for 27 years. They still keep lying and lying and lying. We just tired of it. I mean, of course the war is going on around, like, outside the city. People are dying, innocent are dying. Of course, where there's a war, and especially where America helping them, where Ethiopian soldiers are by using their satellites, pro-satellite and shit like that. Of course, you know what I mean? Like, things can happen, but as I say, like, it's a lot of lie into it too. Also, as you asked, the prime minister, he didn't say really kill your own people, but like Trump say like go and destroy the capital city, right? Actually, when Americans didn't do nothing, where America really don't even involve in war and shit like that. But he saying like when a terrorist group come, we're not gonna stand the whole Ethiopia. We, as I said, or me, Hermela knows. Hermela actually is from Tigray region. We
Okay.
love each other. I love Hermela. It's probably we kind of disagree with ideas, but I don't mean I hate her. I don't mean like I have to see her bleeding. The same thing with other Tigrayans. We don't want to see them dying, all that, but they
But
think
TG,
in their head we hate them.
so
So
TG, let me ask a question. Let me jump in.
uh-huh.
You're in America,
Yeah,
Hermela's in America. I'm not Ethiopian. I'm
yeah.
black, but I'm in America. If I was back home in Africa, it might be a different story. Like for instance, um, do other ethnic groups hate Tigrayans? There's a question, why are Tigrayans being arrested outside of Tigray? Is
Oh,
there a Tigrayan, I don't want to say genocide because I know that's a powder keg, but is there hatred going on where Tigrayans are being discriminated against and in some cases hurt or killed?
so
Go to Hermela.
for that. So unfortunately, right now, there is a to an extent, Tigrayans, innocent Tigrayans that are not pro TPLF have gotten wrapped up in this. And here is why. So there's a report from Dese, which is about 350 kilometers outside of Addis Ababa, where Tigrayan, ethnic Tigrayans who lived alongside their neighbors of other ethnicities for decades, who were covertly working with the TPLF and were being armed by the TPLF and turned on their neighbors and killed them when Tigray militias came into that region. So the Ethiopian government, unfortunately, now is in a position to have to make sure that the Tigrayans that are in the capital of Addis Ababa are not ones that are working with TPLF. TPLF is known for having spies, many of them Tigrayan. I'm sure there's other ethnic groups that are also spying for them as well. They fund this group funds them. They arm these groups secretly. So unfortunately, it's like the family has been turned on each other. So, right, all of us, to me, look, you don't know where we're from, right? We're just black, right, at the end of the day. So imagine we're all living in the same country. We're eating together. We've lived alongside each other for 30 years. And then we find out that one of us is working with this political group. And when they come to attack the city, you turn on us and kill us, right?
Right.
So whoever, the ethnicity of that person, unfortunately, other people now are going to get wrapped up. So I do think that there's innocent Tigrayans that are having to be questioned, that are detained. I do hope that the Ethiopian government is fair about it and that there is no abuse. But I also am practical and understand that that is what they have to do to make sure that the Ethiopian state does not collapse. And I place the blame solely on TPLF for getting so many Tigrayans wrapped up in its false agenda of ethnic superiority or ethnic protection, because what that does when you have a bunch of Tigrayans turning on their own Ethiopian brothers and sisters for this small elite group, then you make all the innocent Tigrayans a part of the whole fiasco.
Right. But Hermela, my question is, as a person, as an innocent bystander who doesn't have a dog in the fight, I can't believe that the Ethiopian government is blameless, right? I know that the American government has its own problems and politicians take advantage of things. I know there was questions around the prime minister and whether or not the election was fair.
It was fair. It was the fairest election we've had in 30 years. TPLF is known for rigging elections. First of all, when they came into power in 1991, they were backed by the Western government and they violently overthrew the communist government. At the time, the majority of Ethiopians accepted them because they too were sick of the communist government, which had turned very bloody. So they were accepted. There wasn't really much resistance. But for 27 years after that, they claimed to have these elections in which they won 100% of the vote, right? So the idea that pro-TPLF folks can actually talk about free and democratic elections when they've never held them is laughable. As you'll see, the majority or a lot of Ethiopians actually do support this prime minister. They're not supporting him because they have a gun to their heads. They're supporting him because they look at him as a person that may be more equitable and just to the 100 million of people in Ethiopia, as opposed to the devil that they have known for 27 years that has proven to be not for the people.
So the question below, first of all, I have a comment from Lilcel. That person said, for you to have an honest conversation about the topic, you need to have people on the other side speak their part. That's true. And I'm open.
They've had plenty of space to tell their lies. It's time's up telling this.
No, Dave, because you know why? It's
Guys,
you're gonna make your like, we would love to hear their part, but we've been hearing it for a year. Everything they put as like fight, like, you know, they create, like, they go to somebody's life.
now
They're
TJ,
not even respectful. What they do is they treat you, they say stuff. So you don't, you know, they not like, even those supporters, the TPLF supporters, like when they do things, we
right.
don't go on their live. We don't treat them. We don't DM them. We don't do anything. We just like, you know what, do whatever you want to do, because
So let me
it's a
ask you a
freedom of speech.
Can I add something, Dave? This is what the equivalent of this is, okay? Because it's always hard to understand in a different different context.
Well, before you say that, let me say this.
30 seconds. It's so important. I'm sorry. It's
Okay.
like bring on slaveholders, okay? Because the slaves are fighting for their freedom.
Mm.
And they've been fighting for their freedom for, you know, decades, right? They have not had the platform. They don't have the media space. And the slaveholders have had it for so long. And then you being a decent person, and because you're getting pressure from slaveholders that are saying we need our perspective told, then you give that space. It's just you
So
wouldn't do it.
it's like bringing on a slave owner or a slave owner sympathizer, like somebody who has what do they call it, Stockholm syndrome. So okay, look, that was an analogy. I see people saying, who are the slaves? That's an analogy, y'all. Don't get caught up in an analogy. Let me say this, Hermela. On my show, After Dark, Dave Life After Dark, we have a bunch of opinions, and I always allow people to come to express the opposite side, but I tell them, you must be respectful. You have to let people say their piece. Now I'm going to say this to everybody watching. This is you guys' night. You all asked to come on the show and to share, and I said, you know what, let's do it. So if you two don't want me to open it up, I won't. Now I'll read questions and I'll let you guys answer the question.
First of all,
Yeah, question is better, because we cannot really, like, you know, we cannot really be dealing with them, because it's not we are afraid or we are afraid of the truth, whatever, but you're gonna make your life what do you call it, like, all this, like a street, like ghetto and shit like that. So we don't want that happening.
Like, we don't want an
We
argument.
come here. Yeah, no,
would
they're
rather
gonna make it like
in an argument.
a lot of an argument, because their brain thinks only one side. It's like a horse, you know, the horse only see one place, like a street, because I have something.
Let me ask
They're
this.
already brainwashed, so they don't see nowhere else.
So let me ask this, TG and Hermela, would you guys be open to doing this another time where I can bring on someone that's, I guess, a TPLF sympathizer, and there can be a discussion if they can keep it respectful and it's not an argument?
Let's read questions. Honestly, here's the thing, Dave. I'm a journalist. I know how to take, you know, pushback. It's not a big deal. But here's why I think these people have practiced lying for a year, right? They've woven the genocide narrative as the people that they support continue to kill other Ethiopians, their own brothers, right? created a scenario, because what that hashtag Tigray genocide is, this is why it's so dangerous. So say, for example, this group in the US, this whatever ethnic or race group creates this idea that Black folks are trying to eliminate them, right? There's a genocide against this group. How dangerous is that? That group is going to come back and try to kill as many Black people as they can. So giving a platform to hashtag Tigray genocide, which has had that platform and dominated that space with CNN and New York Times and AP and the US government behind them, is so dangerous, because what they're going to tell you is people, ethnic Amharans, hate Tigrayans and they're trying to wipe us out. When you give a platform for something like that, what you're doing is telling Tigrayans they're trying to wipe you out. Go kill them first. I'm Tigrayan, right? My family is there, right? I don't like to talk about it too much because CPLF is also very vengeful. And you know, they kill dissent. I mean, me coming out and speaking against pro-TPLF, being in free America, has been so aggressive in terms of their harassment. I know that if I was in Tigray, they would shoot me dead. That's what they do. They've killed over 50 Tigrayans that were working with the Ethiopian government in Tigray for their people, but they killed them because they weren't working with them. So I appreciate what you're saying. And of course, you can always do what you want at the end of the day, but do not feel like this is not being fair because you're not giving this dangerous rhetoric a platform. But we can, I'm happy to address their points.
No, I'm glad you guys are explaining your position and the situation. The reason that I brought you on is because I wanted to create awareness for a group that didn't have the large media behind them, a group that was being marginalized. And I know, like you said, I have Haitian friends, so I understand how people are marginalized and oppressed, and there's political agendas, you know, so I totally get it. So I want to say this. I have about 15 minutes left for this hour. Now, on my on my show, since we talk about relationships and sex, Instagram has put me in timeout, so I can only go 1 hour at a time.
Really?
Yeah, let me tell you, we can talk about that. We can talk about that a whole nother time, Miss Journalist. Trust me, because
that's a whole other topic.
I didn't even think somebody as little as me can get censored, but they censored me. But anyway, so what I do is when I do my show, I do it about 3 hours a night. So I go off for a couple minutes and then I come back. So if you guys want to continue with hour number 2, let me know and we can do another hour.
Nope, I'm in.
You in?
Yeah.
Can you do another hour?
Maybe not, but I'm in for a second reiteration. Yeah.
Okay. So we have 15 minutes and then we'll go away and come back in 2 minutes.
Sure.
All right. So before we get into questions, there are 37 questions and there's 10 people that want to get on this live right now.
Well, I mean, they are. Does it say?
It tells me, it won't tell you.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
It tells me. I can start naming names, but I won't do that just yet. All right, let me get back to understanding the conflict. I think I understand what's going on. I know that the Ethiopian government is in place, that the prime minister was elected officially, that there is an ousted regime, the TPLF, and TPLF does not equal all Tigrayans. Tigrayans are not necessarily all supportive of the TPLF. The current government sees the TPLF as a terrorist group.
They are very much in action, a terrorist group. They kill you if you don't agree with them. They force kids, child soldiers, into fighting. I've heard stories myself through people where they have killed people that do not support the war, killed Tigrayans who have questioned, why are we still doing this? I thought this was about an independent Tigray. I thought this was a genocidal war against us. So why are we sending our kids into regions to kill other people and to never come back? So that's terror. I mean, it's when we say terrorist group, or when the Ethiopian government designates, it's not just a flippant thing. They literally use violence as a form of quelling opposition, including to their own ethnic people.
So, okay, I'm tracking that part. You guys feel that the mainstream media is not reporting things correctly because the TPLF, I saw one of your other reports, Hermela, you were saying that the TPLF helps control the media by putting information out. So all the mainstream media outlets are only getting information that the TPLF has put out. Yep. And that's why you're doing these interviews and the independent journalism and doing your own stories, because you're reporting what's really going on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So let me just go to the bottom of the questions. I'll just ask and then we'll just see what you guys think. some person says, what about the people who don't want to support any side and they're still dying? So what about the innocent Ethiopians that really they're anti-politics, they're apolitical, they don't really want to support the TPLF, they don't want to support the Ethiopian federal government. They're just kind of like, I don't want to do anything to do with any of this. What do you have to say about those people?
I respect people not getting involved in any of this for whatever reason. If they're there, they might be at risk. But neutrality in this situation is not an option, right? Peace for all Ethiopians means this armed insurgency stopping, means this powerful, once very powerful leadership laying down arms, getting out of the country if they need to, finding some amnesty in some Western country that they've been working with so that the people of Tigray can be free, so they can get the services that they need, and so the country could come at peace. So nobody has to do anything. You don't have to speak up. Everybody's got their reasons for not for doing so, but this isn't a 50-50 scenario. If this rebel group stopped fighting, there would be peace. Remember, in June, the Ethiopian government declared a humanitarian ceasefire and left that region. So if the TPLF said, okay, cool, we'll lay down our arms too. Let's have some negotiations with some people, not everybody, because some people not going to have to, not going to be able to get back into the government. There's just too much blood on their hands, right? But there's people in Tigray, younger folks, younger politicians who have not had the chance to really take part in the country's government that the Ethiopian government would absolutely talk to.
Question. When Zam said, can you talk about the Afar people and their struggle as it relates to the TPLF? I know the map that I showed was a little bit older, but what about the Afar people? What about the Amhara people? How are they dealing with the TPLF?
So those are two neighboring regions of Tigray, right? And for whatever reason, I do wish that border was more protected. But after the Ethiopian government declared a humanitarian ceasefire in June, Tigray militias went into the Amhara and Afar region where thousands of people died in fighting. So those two regions, particularly the northern part of the Amhara region and the Afar region, have suffered a lot at the hands of Tigray militias. And this is worth noting because I don't think I get to say this enough. I feel so bad for the Tigrayans that are having to fight this fight that's not theirs. This is an elite group that never gave them anything, and now they've brainwashed them into thinking that everybody else is against them. So when I hear about atrocities like in the Amnesty report today that Tigray militias have committed in terms of gang rape and killings, I think, God, why did they have... I feel bad for them. These are young kids that just didn't know better, and they got used by this, power-thirsty group. So those two regions have suffered a lot. The Afar region has tried to kind of take control of their borders, because part of the reason that they have been attacked is because the Ethiopian government allowed humanitarian aid to go in through their borders. And that humanitarian aid that they allowed to go into Tigray, hundreds of humanitarian aid trucks, was then redirected to carry Tigrayan militias into Afar and Amhara to kill people, right? So it was the Ethiopian government being decent, maybe too much so, or could have controlled it better. And it's affected those regions the most. The Afar people have taken up arms actually to protect themselves. They have refused to let humanitarian aid go through those borders again, because the last time, the couple of months that they allowed it, it came back to haunt them and kill their own people.
Okay, I have a comment that says, free Tigray because TPLF is killing and starving them, not the Ethiopian government. So it sounds like there's a lot of people that are against the TPLF. I've seen some TPLF supportive comments, but I've seen a lot of anti-TPLF people. Is it true that the TPLF is killing and starving their own people in Tigray?
Well, yeah, basically, if people don't get in and out, if humanitarian aid is not getting in and out, people is gonna starve and die. If there's a war, if they just on the border and all that stuff, what you expecting? When there's a war, there is people starving and die. That's why we're screaming right now. People think even Ethiopians, for the last year, when they put this wrongful propaganda and lies and all that outside the world, we weren't really doing much, because it wasn't like we afraid. We were just like, they are our brother and sister. And then I personally was fighting with some of the TPLF group like leaders kids here in LA, and they were stopping me and say that, and then I told them, you know, I don't, Abiy Ahmed or the prime minister is not my dad or my brother or my family, or TPLF is not my family. So if we both fight the bad group, I'm not supporting Abiy. I'm gonna go after Abiy too with you guys. If you guys really for the people of Tigray, then let's fight both of them. You don't want that, right? Okay, you don't want Abiy. You don't want the Ethiopian people. Don't have a problem fighting for both people, like Tigrays or Ethiopians. The whole thing. Tigray is Ethiopian anyway. You know, it's just a different ethnicity. But they were like, no, we TPLF. I say then I have to take one side because the TPLF was like abusing us. I lived and grew up under their dictatorship. You know, I'm a walking witness. Nobody suffered like most of us, especially the Addis Abeban, like teenagers. Like when I was teenager, all of us suffered. I was in a hospital for a month because they break my ribs. They come in the school. They just deploy the whole National Guard on student, young girls, because we protest. And then they were killing so many of my friends. You find the body in the grass, and all this insect all over the body. They were treating us like animals. So we went through the pain. So I know how you guys going through the pain right now because of war, because of our family back home. But if we have to fight all of them, Abiy them, let's fight together for our people. They say, no, we TPLF group, or we are supporting TPLF. Then I say, I'm going to support Abiy because at the end of the day, he has a better option for Ethiopians. You know,
there's a comment here that says, please fact check. The people of Tigray are a minority group and are oppressed. Please let us not forget the people of Oromia and Benishangul. Is it
Jungle.
Okay. So Tigrayans are oppressed, and so are other ethnic groups. And the TPLF is one of the parties that does that. I have a comment here that says, Dave, all international media backs our claims of atrocities by Ethiopia on Tigray. So it sounds like they're
They go back their narrative, so it's got to be true, right? I mean, I'm sorry, like it's just really what it is, right? CNN says it because New York Times says it, even though 100 million Ethiopians and Eritreans and Somalis are saying we don't want any more. These things have not happened. A joint investigation by Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the UN, which is what a lot of the Tigrayan activists or pro-TPLF activists were asking for, found that the atrocities were committed on all sides. There was no deliberate starvation, no denial to civilians of aid, and no mention of genocide, right? So it's the idea, if Tigrayans are oppressed, and I do actually believe to some extent they were, why? Because TPLF kept them that way. The Tigray People's Liberation Front was in power for nearly 30 years. They did not liberate Tigray. They kept Tigray poor. They kept the education system weak. They kept the people oppressed through social issues. So they had 30 years to free their people. They had 30 years to bring their people up through education and healthcare, etc. And they didn't. So if anyone has oppressed the Tigray people, by the way, after they fought in a 17-year war to get this group into power, is TPLF. So this idea that now is when Tigrayans as a minority are oppressed is completely false and is used by pro-TPLF advocates who care more about this 1% political group more than the 110 million Ethiopians, including Tigray, in that country.
Wow. We have a question that says, would you please address how we can detach or free Tigrayans from TPLF's political wrongs? We only have 2 minutes before I have to stop and then come back for hour number 2. So, yeah, how can we free Tigrayans from the oppressive rule of the TPLF? Can you give me 1 minute on that, TG?
I think, and I think they should, like the Tigrayans, especially in the diaspora, Tigrayans that really just walk through, especially the one who don't get any benefit from this TPLF group, should focus more and work for the people, the poor people. Their work can benefit the whole entire, not only for the poor Tigrayan, it will benefit the whole entire Ethiopia. So we can save our country from this, like, you know, animals, because other than that, there's no one way, because the diaspora have like a power, like to do anything. They have voices. They can say whatever they want, like we do. So they want this. This people, this poor Tigray people, life is in their hand. So they the one actually killing. It's not like I'm sometimes I'm like thinking in my head, you're not even killing other regions Ethiopian. You also killing your own people. You holding a blood on your hand like everywhere by killing your own people, by killing Ethiopian people, because you don't want to fight like those rebel group. Even before the war started, there was Abiy Ahmed was asking negotiation. He's saying mothers, he's saying priests, he's saying like begging, let's negotiate, right? They don't want to negotiate. You saw that on videos.
I gotta jump in so we can pause.
Oh yeah.
So look, you guys, it's Dave Life. You're watching Dave Life TV News with Hermela and TG. I appreciate you guys discussing the Tigrayan conflict in Ethiopia. I want everybody to come back in 2 minutes, and we're going to get into hour number 2 of the discussion about the Ethiopian Tigrayan conflict. It's Dave Life with Dave Life TV News. We'll see y'all in 2 minutes.
You too. Thank
Thank you, ladies.